I built this small box from paulownia wood, which was milled from a tree in my backyard. I wanted to try something different and decided on a powdered marble inlay. I found the design online and printed it to scale for both the front and the lid. Also, this was my first attempt at hinge making, which will be the subject of a future video. The design was cut to size. I taped a piece of carbon paper to the lid. A sharpening stone was used to hold the design in place while measuring for square. Now, using a red pen, I traced the design to the lid. The red pen gave me a line that was visible against the black printing of the design. I needed to attach the lid to a solid surface to keep it from moving around during routing. Instead of using double-sided tape, I used masking tape and CA glue to attach it to the larger piece of wood. For inlay work, I used this Dremel router base, which was initially purchased to do some pearl inlay work on my classic guitar. Yes, for those of you in the know, these are Gibson inlays. This router has an air port to blow dust off your workpiece. Air is supplied through a plastic tube. There are various sized bits for doing this type of inlay work, which I make available at budmanproductions.com. I used a bench dog to secure the piece to the top of my workbench. By the way, to keep from breaking these expensive bits, it is best to never cut deeper than the width of the bit. You can really fine-tune the depth of cut with this Stumac router base. For what we're doing here, this really doesn't have to be a deep cut. The noise you hear is my compressor cycling on and off in the background. My final cleanup is done using a Dremel abrasive disc. They work great. The marble I am using are leftover test roof from my mosaic vanity project. I crushed the marble using my small bench anvil and a heavy hammer. I think the heavy hammer is much quicker and easier to work with than a smaller one would be. You can obviously use most any type of stone for making this type of inlay. You may also consider metal filings or sawdust from a contrasting color of wood. The crushed marble is pushed off the anvil onto a piece of white paper. You could use a lot of different things to filter the powdered marble from the larger pieces. I use some double-layered cheesecloth. Then shake it back out onto a white piece of paper. Note here that when I started crushing the black pieces, I used some cardstock to keep the spatter from going off the wrong side of the vise. The reason why can be noted in the addition of a band-aid to my left-hand forefinger. It was a pretty good-sized blood blister. You need to work the powder well into your routed design. I used an acid brush to help smooth it out. I use Bob Smith Industries Super Thin CA glue. There is a major difference in the quality of CA glue, and the cheap stuff just simply will not work very well on a project like this. As soon as I open a new bottle, I top it off with a Pro Tips applicator. Each time I finish a job, I'll just wrap the end of the applicator tip with tape. When I'm ready to use it again, I just simply snip the top off of it. Using this procedure, these bottles will last a long time without hardening. You must use super thin glue in order for it to flow to the bottom of your design. Notice how this super thin sinks in and wets the entire area. This stuff can put off some very noxious fumes, so I suggest you use a charcoal respirator. In order to start flattening my design right away, I sprayed it with Bob Smith's Insta-Set, which will immediately cure the glue. One downside is that the applicator does not work as well as expected. At BudmanProductions.com I have an aerosol version of this which should work much better. I used my belt sander to level the design. If you don't have a belt sander, you may start out with a flat file and then use a sander such as a Black & Decker mouse to smooth it the rest of the way. You will usually have to come back a second time and fill in areas that may not have been up to level. In order to get some contrast, I decided to use white marble to fill in some of these areas. I figured it would give it some contrast. In retrospect, I wish I'd have just left my hands off of it and used black. Once again, we thoroughly wet this down with CA glue. Don't forget your respirator. I applied Insta-Set and went back to the sander. The sanding did take quite a while. I next went over it with my mouse, moving from 150 grit paper and then to 220 grit paper. And finishing off with some 400 grit dry. And here's the final product with clear coat applied. You can see here that my putting the white over the black didn't really enhance it too much, and I wish I hadn't done it. If you have any questions or comments about this video, please post them and I'll certainly respond to you. Hey, you! Make it a great day, and thanks for watching.